Good afternoon. I want to call the November Capital Program Committee to order. Do we have members of the public that are going to provide comments? Ms. King?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. We have 5 members of the public registered to speak today. We have 3 in person and 2 remote. As a
Okay.
reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes, please. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your comments. The first speaker will be Lisa Daglian, followed by Bruce Haynes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, or PCAC. Today, you're going to be asked to move almost $2 billion in projects for approval tomorrow. We're encouraged that accessibility projects make up the lion's share, and by the bundling of projects to save time and money. It's a good example of lessons learned being applied in action. Design build figures heavily into the contracts, and we're hopeful that they're also applied to ensure these projects are built better, faster, and cheaper as well. Another example of lessons learned that we'd love to see more of, and will do whatever we can to help facilitate, is expanded use of the Elmont Station funding model, where UBS Arena developers paid for more than 90% of the project cost. A perfect example of the next stop for a similar agreement would be upgrades to the LIRR and 7 train at Met's Willets Point in anticipation of the Willets Point project. Neither station is accessible, and the tremendous influx of residents, sports fans, and those going to newly created jobs is going to demand a better stop for all. The demand is already there, but funding hasn't been. The opportunity presents itself. Let's work together to make it so, and let's start now. Transit improvement should automatically be baked into developments that increase demand on stations and service, both in terms of capital funding and operational support, particularly on game days. Similarly, Innovation Queens will see thousands of new apartments added to Astoria in an area bordered by 4 subway stations and numerous bus stops. Countless thousands will take advantage of the new community all the community has to offer, and hopefully they'll get there by transit. It's only logical that developers be expected to contribute to improving transit infrastructure to support the growth and need they're creating. The new developments show our city and region are bouncing back, and transit will be key to that success. Investing in transit should be an intrinsic part of investing in this city. We want to see more $2 billion days, but congestion pricing won't be able to do that all. It's time to add new and more funding tools to that mix. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, Bruce Haynes.
Good morning. I wanted to ask, it's maybe I have a misunderstanding, but I thought that if I skipped the LIRR Metro North thing, I could speak 4 minutes here, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Mr. Haynes, I think you're wrong about that. I know you're wrong about that, but why don't we start the clock for Mr. Haynes as of now so he hasn't used up it.
All right, well, that was an expression of generosity anyway, so good.
There you go.
I've tried to impress upon you, this committee in particular, the importance of preserving the configuration that was brought in at the height of U.S. railroad engineering. 1930, the Holt is it called, opened with the Atlantic Track 1, for instance. Now, you only need to move that less than a train's width to get in 4 tracks there so they don't get scrunched down in going west, because they had fewer switches at the time. They didn't need them in the 30s. There was not much traffic. And you can look at it and see where it was a northern track, an additional track could have gone straight through. And then you wouldn't have that bad reverse curve tangent there that's only 12 feet long. That's permanent, I guess. They won't change that in this new in these new developments. The bridge at the end of the new platform, You have one that goes up over an old flyover that's intended for eastbound, and the other one goes down onto the new bridge that looks like it's wide enough for 2 tracks, but maybe it's not. Are we finished yet? And it's an insult. It's an insult to you. Who is conversant in track configuration? You have to study it, or just look at the tracks. It's very interesting. But I know from rail foamers everywhere, they find everything interesting but tracks, and maybe that's the problem. I don't know.
Please conclude your remarks.
That's the end of it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Christopher Greif.
Apparently, Mr. Anthony's not hearing, so let's move on to the next one and hope he returns.
Next speaker will be Christopher Greif.
Sorry, I'm definitely here in person. Good afternoon, Christopher D. Greif. As we're discussing the Capitol, as Lisa Dackley, I definitely agree with her about Willis Point, because that is one area people like to go see the baseball game. If Yankee Stadium has an accessible station, the Mets needs one also. But at the same time, I am here also supporting not just that station, but other stations that need to be ADA accessible. It's very important that seniors and people with disability want to get on those trains. They love the trains. And as I spoke earlier about the Long Island Railroad Cares, with an S now, Metro North Cares and Long Island Cares, we need to make sure that they can enjoy the lovely getting on a train and having fun to go somewhere they like to go for once, maybe out to the other ends of the island of Long Island or up north on the Metro North. But we still need to continue working with accessibility, making sure ramps are up to date, elevators are up to date, and making sure that the funding, please, must go in, because we need every ounce of accessibility at the stations, especially with the special intercom that Long Island Railroad has on the NASA, one stop in Brooklyn at Nostrand, as well as partially on the Oyster Bay. It does help the customers to see, the driver can see there is a wheelchair, walker, or any mobile device, or a senior or a person with disability is waiting for that train, and they can get them on safely and quickly. And with Long Island Cares and the Metro North Cares, wherever we have them, we always need them, because they always a very big help to make sure they can get on and make sure they get on safely and know where they are, so the next ambassador can know where they are in that position car. I have seen it, and I have to say, as a Long Island Railroad and Metro North 88 Task Force member, it is working very well. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the board. So what I want to talk about is very important, is that now that you guys have built third track, LIR third track, East Side Access is opening, and the Ronkonkoma tracks have been finished. What we need in Long Island, in Nassau and Suffolk County, is regional MTA bus. Nice bus. Nassau Intercounty Express and Suffolk County buses is horrible. The service is horrible. They cannot manage the service, and I think there needs to be a task force put together to look at regional bus, especially for Nice Bus in Nassau County and Suffolk Bus, and that should be incorporated into some parts of the Queens Bus redesign, because they're having a lot of breakdowns. Nice Bus cannot even do the Long Island Railroad shuttle buses. It's just horrible. So please, Mr. Chairman, if you could look into that. And also, I'm very upset because I heard today that the Hollis station, the elevators will be considered when there's money there. So I was under the assumption, we were all misled to believe that the Hollis capital construction project was being redesigned and was going to be approved sometime in November or December. So, Mr. Chairman, please, I beg you, we need the Hollis station fixed up. Also, the Hunters Point Avenue station is a mess. It's falling apart. That needs to be fixed up. And also the Elmhurst, LIRR station needs to be looked at. I understand Southeast Queens, they have a very, there's competition between Locust Manor and these other stations, but Hollis still has wooden platforms. And recently they did some work a few weeks ago where they tried to, fix the wooden ties, but the station, Hollis, needs to be completely rebuilt. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you in the next one.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Jason Anthony.
Hey, Jano. Sorry for the difficulties that I had earlier. As you guys see, I'm here in the Amazon Performance Center here in Staten Island. Yet again, Charles D'Souza left out the Brooklyn station of East New York. That shows you right there that he is exclusive. And yet again, the only road out to the LIRR is pushed back to 2025. Also, according to an article that was published in Newsday yesterday, this is pretty alarming and should alarm Amy's team. And again, we should reconsider opening the Grand Central Madison station to maybe February or March of next year, that we could learn from the lesson learned from Second Avenue Subway Phase 1, that we could repeat the lesson again that occurred during Phase 1 that opened sooner rather than later. So, General, think it twice before opening East Side Access earlier rather than later. So, I'll see you guys in finance.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public comment session.
All our public commenters. And thank you, Liz. Copies of the October Capital Program Committee minutes have been distributed and are available on the website. Changes or comments to the minutes? None. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Michael, are there any changes to the work plan?
No, Mr. Chairman, no changes to the work plan at this time. Thank you.
Great. So let me, at this point, turn it over to Jamie Torres Springer for the President's report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a busy and exciting agenda for today's meeting, including an overview of the strategic review we've undertaken for our signals and train control business unit, and the plan to get signal modernization projects done better, faster, and cheaper, along with the IEC's presentation on our current projects. We'll also be hearing from the head of our new systems business unit, Mark Beanstalk, which we created to deliver ever more complex technology projects. And we'll hear from Michael Garner on the MTA's continued success on MWBE and DBE contracting and procurement, and Nan Ing, who heads up our business unit that supports all that work through the Small Business Development Program. I want to start by describing the procurement actions for your consideration today. There are a number of them, as was said. We have approximately $2 billion worth of contracts to recommend to the committee to bring to the board this month. As we approach the end of the year, the entire C&D team, especially our contracts, delivery, and development departments, are working around the clock to ensure that we meet our goals of significant new contracted capital work and that we ramp up the amount of work that we're bringing into contract for 2022. Today's a major step in that effort. The design build procurements, as I mentioned before you today, represent nearly $2 billion in new contracts. We're advancing some of our highest priority projects with today's procurements, including accessibility. Today, we advance our first public-private partnership, which will make 8 more stations fully ADA accessible with 21 new elevators, and upgrade existing elevators at 5 more stations with 14 replacement elevators. This contract is a leading and best practice where our delivery partner will finance the work and maintain the new elevators and will receive payments only if they build and maintain them to the high standards that we've set. It's a performance-based approach that is getting these MTA accessible stations, getting the MTA these accessible stations at a lower cost than a conventional construction and maintenance contract. And I want to acknowledge Deputy Chief Development Officer Tim Mulligan and our Executive Vice President and General Counsel Evan Iceland for, among all the many things that they do, for really spearheading this new public-private partnership and the innovation behind it. It's a tremendously exciting contract structure as we continue to build out C&D to deliver effectively. We also have a major ADA accessibility and station renewal project at Borough Hall in Brooklyn. And it's not just the subways. Also, before the committee today is our first ADA package of this capital program for the Long Island Railroad, taking some of the same bundling lessons that we've learned from our subway work and applying them to the commuter railroads. You can see the 9 stations that will become fully ADA accessible through this contract. We have additional stations, including Hollis Station, in design for a future contract for ADA accessibility. We're also awarding an important state of good repair project for the RFK Bridge, which reconstructs the access ramps. In addition to that critical state of good repair work, it also supports bike and pedestrian access in line with the plan that was presented to the board last month by Jessica Matthew. This is a key connection where we know there is demand for bike and pedestrian trips, and we're pleased to be able to advance that goal with this contract. Now, turning to today's agenda, we'll start with the Signals and Train Control Business Unit. This will be a little different than the typical business unit update. While we have some updates to individual projects and we'll hear from the IEC, our focus is to update the committee on the agency-wide strategic review that we've undertaken for our signal modernization effort. Signal modernization is central to C&D's core infrastructure mission, and I wanted to present this to the committee because it represents the work across C&D, all departments that are collaborating in how we advance this work. But I'm joined by the co-heads of the business unit, Gregoire Soulmont and Dan Creighton, as well as Mark Roche, who everyone knows heads up our delivery department. And it's really the expertise and experience of those leaders that have shaped this plan that I'll be talking about today, and they're available to answer your questions. First, as a refresher, how did we get to CBTC? Our legacy subway signaling system, like the subway system as a whole, was a marvel of 20th century engineering. Each line is divided into blocks to keep the trains a safe distance apart from one another. When a train is detected in a block through equipment installed along the tracks, or what we call the wayside, nearby signals keep other trains a safe distance away from that block with a considerable buffer. So far, so good, but as technology improved, this system developed drawbacks that became impossible to ignore. The block system requires too much distance between trains to keep things safe, so trains can't run close together, or as fast as we would like, which limits service for our riders. The wayside equipment also requires a huge amount of maintenance, often requiring our great maintenance of way staff to be walking the 850 miles of track on a regular basis. And since the detection and signal systems are decentralized, we don't know centrally where and how fast trains are moving, which makes it harder to run a modern system. In 1991, with some foresight, MTA leadership boldly decided to jump to the emerging signaling technology at the time, communications-based train control, or CBTC. Through installation of new equipment on trains and on the wayside, all in direct communication with the Rail Control Center, we have a digital picture of where our trains are and how fast they're moving at all times. That means the old blocks that slowed trains down and kept them too far apart can become moving blocks, as you see in this animation, so we can safely run them faster and closer together. We need far less equipment on the wayside and have much less to maintain and less risk of failure, and we can manage the system centrally and do so much more accurately. This was unquestionably the right move. The technology prevails around the world today. We have successfully transitioned to CBTC on the 7 and the L lines with major improvements. On the 7, for example, on-time performance improved from 68% to 91%, and train speeds have increased between 8 and 14% on those lines as they've been in operation. And under C&D leadership, we've dramatically accelerated CBTC, spending $6.7 billion in the current 5-year capital program to modernize signals. We have 4 lines under construction that you can see here. The lines that are currently in work are those that require interoperability between different lines. So this was another big leap forward that we made with these lines, where the MTA owns the technology and is able to get competitive bids for the technology from multiple suppliers. We also announced last summer at this committee that we're prioritizing completing the B division lines next. This has the benefit of ensuring the oldest portions of our signaling system, including some switches that date back to the 1930s, and some of our least reliable lines get upgraded for CBTC. Of course, as we mentioned back then, these lines also serve some of the communities that are most dependent on public transit across the system. But there have been major challenges too, impacting schedule, as you will see in your board books on the detailed status of the projects that are underway. And you'll also hear from the IEC. And I would note that we agree with the IEC about these delays and issues and are working on them together. CBTC has been in operation on the Queens Boulevard line west, QBL West, the E, F, R, and M lines in Queens since earlier this year, which will be a major benefit to our riders on those lines. But we're not happy with the reliability outcomes that we're seeing. We expect some failures that impact service as we transition to CBTC, but we're seeing one major disruption a month and also regular, more minor disruptions, which is far too many. These are largely the result of software performance issues that our technology provider Siemens needs to address. We are not going to declare the project substantially complete as planned until the problems are addressed. The board can be assured that we are using every tool at our disposal to compel performance by this vendor, including regular executive level engagement with Siemens officials. We're also showing a delay here on the Culver line, the F and the G in Brooklyn. This is due to specialized ties ordered for the track work part of the project that were not designed correctly, which has led to cascading delays. We are working to have the parts refabricated as quickly as possible and to reduce the delay that you see as a result. On 8th Avenue, which equips the A, C, and E in Manhattan and through to High Street in Brooklyn for the A and C, the project is delayed, as we reported in the summer, because of the late arrival of the new R211 trains, which will come CBTC equipped, so they'll fit right into the system. We talked about this rolling stock delay back in the summer. We are also seeing some performance issues on the replacement of the conventional signals, which still have to remain in place, as I described earlier. That's also Siemens that is responsible for that delay, and we're working with Siemens and the prime contractor Comstock to ensure that these delays are addressed ahead of the rolling stock delivery so it doesn't cause any further delay. Queens Boulevard Line East is a new project. It was awarded at the end of last year. It continues to be on track. It's got 3 different contracts. So integrating the schedules is the most important immediate task, and we're hard at work on that. We have a path forward on each of these projects, which, again, we have a consensus with the IEC on, but it's clear that our CBTC delivery process has systemic issues, and we need a systemic solution, not just one-offs. The connecting thread between these systemic challenges is that we need to treat CBTC as a technology project rather than a traditional construction project. How are we going to do that? And this is our plan. Most fundamentally, we need a better approach to managing and governing our projects. To that end, Transit President Rich Davey and I have created a steering committee of senior executives from across our organizations to identify problems and solutions more proactively. Through this steering committee, which meets monthly, We're ensuring that the build-out and operations are managed as one, meaning there are no late surprises as the projects are handed over, and that we are solving problems collaboratively as they arise. Through this process, we're building our internal capacity to manage these systems across their life cycle, which is critical for CBTC, and get the most from our contractors. Part of that is also implementing design build, performance-based requirements for our upcoming projects. That's a major step towards treating CBTC as a technology project, ensuring that milestones can be met to address the type of software challenges that we have early on. And I also want to note that we're applying this lens toward project management retroactively, launching a review of the performance reliability on the 7 and the L lines to build on the improvements that have already been made. That's our project management approach. Beyond the management of individual projects, we're also taking steps system-wide to clear the way for more effective signal modernization. This starts with scope definition. Current projects have seen challenges from scope elements that are not actually signal modernization, like track work or traction power upgrades. These are still critical. This is still critical work that needs to be done on these lines as we do this work, but we're looking at separating contracts out so that we can focus on the challenges of signal modernization within these contracts. We're also taking steps to simplify the system and reduce dependence on legacy technology by integrating the CBTC system with much of the work of the wayside signals. In order to take full advantage of that integration, we also need to equip our work trains with CBTC. Our work trains are an essential part of our system. They allow us to perform capital and maintenance work, but they too need to move through the system, and they've relied on legacy wayside equipment. Next year, we'll launch a competitive RFP to use cutting-edge AI technologies to equip the work trains with CBTC functionality, which will help us to take advantage of CBTC throughout the system. This was a great outcome of both the work we did on the track trespassing task force last year and our partnership with the Transit Tech Lab, that we identified this technology for the work trains and are moving forward with it. Our long-term goal is to reduce the conventional wayside equipment. It's a major maintenance challenge, as I mentioned, requiring a manual inspection on a monthly basis. As we simplify the system, get our work trains equipped, and demonstrate CBTC's reliability, we will move toward this goal. Lastly, we're looking forward to the next set of challenges to make sure we stay ahead of those. We'll be replacing the radio system that underpins CBTC as it becomes obsolete, using an internet protocol or IP technology that will take advantage of all the new fiber cable we're installing in our tunnels and stations. We're also launching a review of how to most effectively get the A division onto CBTC through retrofitting, allowing us to move faster rather than waiting for new car deliveries. So with these actions in place, we'll be able to deliver signal projects better, faster, and cheaper, make the system more reliable and maintainable, speed up deployment, and reduce the disruption while we'll do so, and also reduce the lifecycle cost. I want to thank the incredible leaders and the members of our Signals team who have led this strategic review, and will make it a success as we move forward and implement it.
I have a question. Jamie, can you go back to the Culver line? You said there's a 2-year delay.
Yes.
That's not a technology problem. That's, right?
It's not a technology problem. It's a problem. We have components of special track work that we need to do, and they were not properly designed. That's a function of, first of all, having a lot of track work to do as part of CBTC, which is something we're addressing as part of the scope. And it's also a contract and performance management issue that we're addressing with the contractor. I don't know if Gregoire or Dan want to address that further.
Who's the contractor on that?
Tudor Perini.
Tudor, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, gentlemen. Yeah.
And then the QBL West, that's the Siemens problem that we're still having.
Yes.
What was that?
The software issue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, is there anything, Gregoire or Dan, would you like to just elaborate briefly on what the software technology problem is that we're having on QBL West, or Mark?
Sure,
Yeah.
I'll do that. I mean, I think to get the system into operation in January, we had very good progress on software to get to that point. Since January, the upgrades have not worked very well, to be very blunt about it. I think we put that down to some of the attention that Siemens has given to the quality of the updates. So we are working with them to make sure that, let's put it, that they give their best team to addressing the issues that we're finding. So we have a path with Siemens to work through the software updates, and we're making sure through their highest management level that they're giving us the attention that we need to get to the point of completion.
And tell me we're holding Siemens accountable for all this, right?
Yes, without a doubt.
Okay.
Board Member Alger.
While you're on this slide, are we to assume that the culvert issue is south of Church Avenue since you don't have the G listed on there? It's between Church and Stillwell, the problem?
Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And Jamie, on your very first slide where you showed elevators coming in, the Sheepshead Base Station said M and Q instead of B and Q.
Thank you.
IEC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. The IEC is reporting on 4 CBTC projects today, each with its own set of challenges, risks, and issues. The details and any recommendations are spelled out in our reports in the CPC book, beginning on page 18. The CBTC program has 3 primary objectives: to provide CBT systems with improved safety, provide increased capacity, improve operational flexibility. These objectives are achieved on these 4 projects through overlaying CBTC on a wayside signal installation, which provides improved train location accuracy, and installing communication and computer control equipment on all cars at control centers and wayside locations. To be effective, a CBT system must meet certain reliability, availability, and maintainability, or RAM requirements, as well as stability. Here are highlights on the 4 projects that we are discussing today. On 8th Avenue, overall this project is 73% complete, and while it has experienced several months' delay, it continues to make progress. The project schedule is being impacted by the concurrent delay in the delivery of CBTC-equipped R211 cars provided by Kawasaki under a separate contract, which is now projected for completion in January of 2025. This is followed by in-service CBTC testing, estimated to be completed around October 2025. The IEC is concerned that the planned car delivery is too optimistic still and believes there is further risk that if the production does not meet planned delivery rates, further delays will occur on this project. The project is within the established budget of $828 million, which is a $54 million increase since our last report in April. This is primarily due to the procurement of CBTC equipment for the 640 R211 Option 1 cars. On the Queens Boulevard line west, the core project is forecast to be 2 years late due to technical issues, as you heard, system stability, which are being addressed through system modifications being made by the CBTC suppliers. The contractors are expected to meet the stability requirement by May of 2023. Contractors are making good progress in validating interoperability. In addition to resolving Siemens communication issues, Thales must resolve technical issues to enable their trains to operate in revenue service through the CBTC territory and thus allowing for full interoperability. Overruns in TA labor, engineering force account have resulted in a budget shortfall of at least $70 million, which will require budget reconciliation when the final estimate of completion is determined. On the Culver line, overall this project is 83% complete, remains within its original budget of $482 million. There are several claims which may impact the project's estimate of completion, however. In April, the project reported a 15-month delay. During this reporting period, resolution of previously reported inconsistencies between the ties and track conditions at Ditmos interlocking has impacted the project schedule by an additional 11 months, which moves substantial completion to October 2024. The IC agrees that this allows sufficient time to complete this project. On the Queens Boulevard line, the total budget and estimated completion for the project are $539 million, unchanged since contract award. Both the installer, EJ Electric, and the CBTC supplier, Mitsubishi, were awarded contracts in December of 2021. Recently, the AWS subcontractor Hitachi was approved and is now working on submittals and RFIs needed to move this project forward. A separate task order for the supply of data communication system is still under negotiation. Meanwhile, Siemens has agreed to provide interim technical support to the survey and design activities. The IEC is concerned that the delay in awarding the DCS task order to Siemens and the Hitachi's approval may have a negative impact on the project schedule, which is currently scheduled for completion in July of 2026. That's it for CBTC, but I have a couple additional comments on the Systems BU and BRS, if I may. Thanks. Just briefly, just to mention that the Systems Business Unit traffic light summary is on page 43 of your committee book for your review. On the BRS radio system, the IEC report in BRS is in your committee book and it starts on page 44. It should be noted that the pilot was completed October 22nd, and on October 31st, bus installations began and expects to continue to ramp up the remainder of this year. The IEC is monitoring the contractor's performance in this regard. And that concludes my remarks.
Okay, thank you, John. I just want to say when we have, this is complicated, difficult, not all good news, but I just want to make sure that folks understand that you have a situation where the project team and the independent engineering consultant, who's the second guessing operation, are actually working in alignment. And that's, for me, that is an important milestone, something I tried to get started in the old days. And we just want to make sure that we're not arguing about how to fix projects and what ails them. And they're maybe at the risk of being too much glass half full in a slightly concerning situation, that is a positive development in this broader context. So with that, maybe we're going to hear from Mr. Beanstalk about the Systems Business Unit of C&D.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Beanstalk, and I'm the leader of the Systems Business Unit. The photo you see on the screen right now is a rendering of the new Power Control Center, a project which I will talk about momentarily. The Systems Business Unit was established in September of this year. Prior to that, Systems was part of the Infrastructure Business Unit. Systems was created to develop within C&D an expertise in mission-critical systems and control center operations, which incorporate multiple disparate systems to manage the operation of the subway system. We will provide expert project delivery from planning through execution for MTA critical systems, including control centers, emergency and customer communications, and cameras. Systems currently manages 91 active projects with a value over $2 billion. So far in 2022, we awarded 16 projects and completed 11 projects. Like other business units, we continue to suffer from attrition of both our own staff as well as subway staff who support the work we do. In addition, this past year, several projects were impacted by supply chain shortages. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons for the formation of the new business unit was to develop an expertise in control centers and their operations. In August of 2021, an incident occurred at the Rail Control Center, which resulted in a loss of power to several critical systems and impacted train service. Studies were conducted by both in-house personnel and data center experts, which yielded a list of recommendations. The Rail Control Center and Power Control Center were reclassified as the Operations Control Center, recognizing the critical role both facilities play in operations. MTA acted immediately to implement the most pressing recommendations to mitigate the risk of a similar event from recurring and impacting service. Installation of uninterruptible power supplies on key equipment and workstations was completed. We completed the redistribution of electrical loads to redundant power buses, and we provided additional training and developed new procedures for staff. There are several current actions underway and planned to implement the remaining recommendations. A project recently awarded to improve the reliability and operation of the BMT traction power control system will start to modernize the power control center seen in the photo on the top right, by replacing the antiquated master terminal units with a new state-of-the-art video wall and monitors. An emergency backup power control center will be constructed to provide redundancy and allow subway service to continue if a failure occurs. This design-build project was awarded in September of this year. We have several initiatives underway to improve track safety. Track intrusion detection systems to detect people on the tracks and alert train operators will be a design-build contract implemented at 5 stations. Laser intrusion detection systems will detect people entering subway tunnels at an additional 11 locations. Platform screen doors are being piloted with an award planned for next year. We just completed a proof of concept in partnership with Transit Tech Lab, part of the Transit Innovation Partnership, using forward-facing cameras and machine learning. The system was able to accurately identify people, obstacles, and signal aspects, and we are proceeding with an extended pilot. Finally, as presented at the July board meeting, we will soon be signing a license agreement with Transit Wireless to deploy cellular service throughout all 307 underground subway tunnels and Wi-Fi in all above-ground stations. All below-ground stations already have cellular service and Wi-Fi. Transit Wireless will also be installing cellular antennas inside station entrance globes at approximately 200 stations to improve above-ground cellular service. A key benefit to the MTA will be the 48 strands of new fiber optic cable installed at every station dedicated for MTA use. In addition, MTA will share in the revenue generated by this system. That completes my presentation.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Beanstalk? This is big stuff in the, basically transit equals technology now, and it made sense. I commend Jamie and the C&D team for organizing around the reality that we need a group devoted just to systems. Mr. Albert.
On the CBTC report that we heard earlier and the move to expand it, would utilizing ultra-wideband frequency be an interim step or a reduced cost step in some locations?
It's a technology that we've done some study on, and I might ask Gregoire if he wants to comment on the status of that study and potential.
So earlier we mentioned the procurement for the work train. So typically for the work train, we are expecting to use advanced technologies such as ultra-wideband. It may not be ultra-wideband, it may be different technology, but we are opening the door. And clearly the ultra-wideband was an opportunity to create this relationship with industry to trigger innovation.
Right. Yeah. Do you want to get in? Right, and just noting that ultra-wideband as a technology for signaling would be in addition to CBTC, not instead of CBTC.
That's right.
I got a demo of it at one point, and it can be put on work trains, it can be put on anything, and it distinguishes between a person and a rat, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as was mentioned, I think Mark mentioned it, we've explored a number of technologies. There's a very promising technology he described that we're going to further pilot, which is actually the same technology that we're looking at for the work trains.
Okay. All right. Just want to move it along because we're also very mindful of Gregoire's interest in the U.S.-Iran soccer game, or lack thereof. Mr. Garner, we are graced with your presence to update us in the MWBE DBE program. Please go ahead.
Great, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here. I'm going to talk about our MW, DBE, and SDVOB inclusion on our capital construction projects. Let me just give you a quick overview. Out of 97 agencies and state authorities in the state of New York, the MTA is ranked #1 with dollars paid to our state certified firms. That number last year was $826 million at 32.5% MWBE inclusion. The state of New York, the 97 agencies paid a total of $2.6 billion last year to state certified MWBE firms. So the MTA paid 31.8% of all dollars paid by the state of New York in this organization last year. Let me also say that out of the $826 million that was paid by the MTA, $477 million, or 60%, was paid in construction. So construction is one of the leading drivers of MW, DBE, and SDVOB inclusion at the MTA. The next page, please. And so on our state projects, our MWBE, we have an annual goal of 15%. We are currently at 15% payments. When you look at the next caption, WBEs, 15%, we are at 14%. And so in the area of capital construction, we are at 29% of achieving our goal of 30%. With respect to SDVOB, we are challenged, but we have an annual goal of 6%. We are at 1%. But part of that is that there are over 1,000 certified SDVOB firms in the state of New York. 70% of those firms are upstate. And so as we work with OSD to recruit and certify more SDVOBs, we are optimistic that we are going to basically improve that 1%. We are at 4% of awards. As time goes on, that 1% is going to increase. And so we're working with certifying more SDVOB firms. That's our challenge. Also, our challenge is to make sure, as Chairman Lieber always states, that the size of our capital program, we need to get out and we need to certify more MW and DBEs in construction so we can maintain the dominance in which we have shown that we are in fact doing. And so we have created an advertising campaign touting the small business programs that we have here, and the reason why our certified MWDB firms in our regions should work here at the MTA, not only as prime contractors, but also as subcontractors on some of our major projects, mega projects. Let's talk about our annual DBE goal is at 20%. The FTA requires us to track awards, and so we are at 7% of 20%, but that's a misnomer. And the misnomer is that as we have pivoted to a new process called design build, the FTA requires us to fully identify all of our DBE firms up front, which is impossible to do. And so during the most recent comment period, the US DOT comment period, we, along with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, SEPTA in Philadelphia, the CTA in Chicago, and LA Metro, we have lobbied the FTA to change the way that they require us to track DBE. Give us the ability to use TBDs as long as the construction trade and the associated dollar amount is in fact highlighted. And during the open comment period, they are receptive and they are having internal discussions right now of changing their requirements, which will allow us to use TBDs. And if we use those TBDs during the last year, it was $450 million that was highlighted, which is going to be 20%. And so we are on target in all of our categories, with the exception of SDVOBs, in which we are going to be working harder in order to basically recruit and certify more SDVOBs, but also certify more MW and DBEs as well. Let me just
Michael,
say,
can I just interrupt you?
Yes.
Just making sure the board understands this, that Michael, the C&D team, folks who do the contracting and procurement for the MTA, hitting it out of the park on the state-funded contracts. Those are the numbers that Michael talked about for minority, MWBE, and MBEs and WBEs, minority and women-owned contractors. At the federal level, the way that the FTA rules operate is actually causing a misrepresentation of how well what they're accomplishing. And that's why this application, this initiative has been undertaken with the feds to get them to change the way that they account for it. In the design build process, you cannot ask the contractor to enumerate every sub down to the very end of a project when they haven't even started design in some cases. So Michael's proposal, which is one that's been adopted together with other major players, is to have certain contracts reserved for qualified, federally certified DBEs. It's an important initiative. I just wanted to credit you because that's, that's your accomplishments are being a little bit misrepresented by this rule. So back to you, Mike.
And thank you. And so, our MWDB programs, as the chairman indicated, we are achieving and we're changing the paradigm in the construction industry. We're not operating in a simplified building construction industry. We are operating in a civil and infrastructure one. And so we're showing where we can build our projects safely, timely, on budget, and inclusive of our MW, DBE, and SDVOB goals. And once we award contracts in those areas, there's job creation, there's home ownership, there's better educational opportunities and healthcare options being experienced in those sectors. And let me just also thank the chairman and thank the MTA board for giving us the resources that we need in order to execute this program. And it is a partnership with C&D and Jamie and his staff, and also MTA, HQ Procurement, as we're driving effective change, and also our third-party contractors and consultants, who we are partners in not only driving inclusion, but once again, finishing our project safely, timely, and on budget. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Garner? This continues to be an area of incredible accomplishment. So well done, Mike, and well done to Jamie and the C&D team. I think we are going to hear from Nan Eng, if I'm not mistaken, about the small business program, which is a very close cousin of the MWBE program.
Good afternoon. I am Nan Eng, Small Business Development Unit Leader. The photo shown here is a newly constructed ADA compliance elevated street stairs at Brighton Beach Station in Brooklyn. I'd like to first give the committee a quick intro of the program. The SBDP program became New York State law in 2010 and was renewed for 10 more years in 2019. The purpose of the program is to afford participating small businesses with the opportunity to obtain public work as general contractor. The MTA strategy is to engage small businesses in the tri-state area and help them grow into bigger companies. The MTA provides training, on-site mentoring, and loan assistance to ensure contractors' success in the program. The MTA plans in its 5-year capital program for SBDP and creates a portfolio of projects annually to match contractors' capabilities. Within the SBDP program, we break up projects into 3 tiers by size of contract to help the smallest companies compete. The program has awarded 551 projects, valued at $573 million since inception. Here are the awards for 2022. While the federal program is less than what we'd like to see, it's offset by a surplus in the Tier 2 program, as contractors can work in both Tier 2 and federal program. This year, we are completing 57 out of 61 projects, value at $59.3 million. The delay of 4 projects are due to field conditions and supply chain issues. Major categories of work completed include HVAC, CCTV, painting, building facade and roofing, bus chassis wash equipment, paving, landscaping, and bridges tunnel preservation. The program is working well and delivering projects on time and within budget. Here are some project highlights. Replacement of two 10-ton HVAC units and miscellaneous roofing repair work at Murphy Tower, 38th Street Yard in Coney Island is targeted for completion by end of December 2022. Installation of new ticket vending machine shelter sheds at Long Island's Deer Park and Brentwood stations was completed on May 24, 2022. This concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add quickly that, as Nan pointed out, there's been tremendous success in moving the small business programs forward to completion. We're performing well. Also, in the last year, in the same mode as creating the systems business unit, we've been able to consolidate all the work that's done on the small business development and mentoring program. So the technical assistance work that was previously done elsewhere within the MTA is under Nan as well, and she's able to bring all of that work to bear so that we're really mentoring contractors as they do the work. Everything is really together. We also have an ambitious agenda to continue to, the goal of the mentoring program is to make new contractors, support new contractors, create new primes that can take on our work, and we need to continue to increase the scale of that. So we're looking at opportunities to do that and give them more capacity. Nan and her team have been extremely creative in coming up with those solutions, and looking forward to having some more of that to report on the next time we come up before the board.
Any questions for Nan? Okay. Thanks, Nan. Mr. Cannon, will you undertake the massive pile of procurements?
Thank you, Chair Lieber. Good afternoon. Construction and Development has 12 procurement actions being brought to the Capital Program Committee this month, all of which are in the competitive section. As Jamie mentioned, one of particular note is a request to award a publicly advertised and competitively solicited contract for the design, construction, financing, and maintenance of American with Disabilities Act accessibility upgrades at 13 stations throughout New York City to elevated accessibility enhancements. This contract represents the first contract to be awarded by C&D using the public-private partnership or P3 project delivery model, which requires the developer to design, build, and maintain the new elevators and finance a portion of the project. This format provides, among other benefits, very strong incentives for the developer to satisfy the elevator maintenance performance requirements because the failure to do so results in a reduction of payments to the developer. The other items in the package include the award of design-build contracts for ADA improvements to 9 Long Island Railroad stations located in Nassau, Queens, and Suffolk counties, reconstruction of the Randall's Island ramps of the RFK Bridge, accessibility upgrades at the Borough Hall Station, along with the award of a long-term maintenance contract to service the new elevators at the station, construction of a new railroad bridge and 2 new mainline tracks for the Long Island Railroad at Hall Interlocking, circulation improvements at Grand Central 42nd Street Station, installation of a laser intrusion detection system at 13 Under River, New York City Transit subway tubes and 29 stations, escalator replacements at 2 New York City subway stations, 1 in Manhattan, 1 in Queens, replacement of the Long Island Railroad motor generators at Hillside and Babylon with 2 motor generators, replacement of the timber ties on Metro North Railroad's Muna Viaduct. There is also a modification to an existing contract for the maintenance of all the elevators and escalators at the new Grand Central Madison Terminal for a period up to 7 months from the commencement of revenue service. All of these items are described in detail in the staff summaries contained within your committee books, and I hereby submit them for your consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. Let me get a motion, and then we'll do discussion. Motion?
So moved.
Second on all the procurements? Okay. Any discussion? Mr. Albert?
I think this accessibility improvements, elevators and escalators are urgently needed. I think this is so great. I think this will help us reach that 130 station goal that we aimed for 2023. I will say that in the actual application that we're reading in our books, you don't always put the line that the stations are on. And while I figured out, because the church in Nostrand and the church in McDonald are already accessible, this has to be the Brighton Line church. But like in the case of Woodhaven Boulevard, I saw the map, so I know it's the M and R, but it could have been the J. So I think it would be helpful if we could put the lines, and that way we would know exactly what we're talking about. But it's great,
taken.
and I think we can do it.
Point taken. And if it, why don't we just recirculate the material with an indication, some kind of a chart that makes it clear what line it is. Helpful point. Any other comments? This is. I was not kidding when I said massive pile of procurements. This is what this C&D team has been warming up to do for many, many moons. So tip of the hat to Mr. Iceland and Mr. Mulligan and Mr. Cannon and all those who drove it. Other comments? Okay. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposition or abstentions? The motion carries. That, I believe, concludes today's agenda. Motion to adjourn. Second, we are adjourned.